Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy.
Story number 1. An Old Promise, written by Echoing Cascade. Corum had thought the hive incursion on the planet would never reach his tiny little village. He was wrong. The attack had begun an hour ago, and the little defenses they could muster were crumbling already. A large centipede-like creature ran past the barricade that he was holding as it began to curl itself, and spikes protruding from its body. They had seen this before. It was about to explode. Everyone ran away from the creature except him, and not by chance. His injured leg made this impossible. Except someone was running towards the creature. With the heavy steps, an armored soldier, easily twice his size, ran and kicked the living grenade away from Corum. As it exploded, 2 spikes pierced the soldier's arm and abdomen. The giant then took a syringe from a pouch and injected the contents into his neck. "My shuttle is at the back. Take it. I'll hold them off." 2 of his friends ran back and helped to get Corum to the escape vessel. As he looked back, his savior began to laugh as he fired on full auto at the oncoming wave of chitin. When Corum came back from the capital, accompanying the troops sent to retake the village, he saw what remained like a miracle. The soldier was sitting on a rock at the entrance to the village, his arm and stomach crudely bandaged. He had a smile on his face and was smoking a cigar. His name was Apone. He was a human ranger. He had been part of the Alliance crew that was in orbit monitoring the hive progress. He had noticed the attack on our village and volunteered for a rescue mission. Our orders were to observe. For 5 damn months, all we did was watch. His eyes turned dark, and Corum noticed that they quickly brightened again. Luckily, 2 days ago, we were told to engage at our discretion. The boys would have loved to join me, but I made the call and came alone. Couldn't risk them bugs getting access to too much human DNA to evolve themselves with. Corum learned that Apone was a sergeant, a lower-rank officer in the human army. Before leaving, Corum asked him to return one day to show him around. Apone smiled. "It's a promise. I'll bring my kid Manula. She always wanted to travel, and my tour is nearly done." Days turned into weeks, then months, and finally 3 years had passed and Apone had still not returned. Corum took it upon himself to track down the man who he owed his life. When he approached the human embassy and explained why he was tracking the ranger, the woman at the desk smiled and began searching. It wasn't long before she found the answer, and her smile dropped. Corum walked from the embassy to the ship that had taken him to the capital in a daze. He couldn't believe what he'd been told. He wouldn't. He vowed to conduct his own search. But it was true. The man who had faced the hive army to save him and his village had died on the streets, homeless and forgotten. After his return to civilian life, he had tried to reintegrate but failed. He had nightmares about what he had seen, what he had done, but what really haunted him was what he hadn't done. His temper suffered from lack of sleep and became extremely irritable. Alcohol helped dull his senses, but being drunk most of the time cost him his job. When his wife left him, it was the final straw. Being separated from her and his daughter was more than he could bear. He left his rented apartment one day and wasn't found or heard of until months later, when he was found dead. Corum couldn't understand why, how something like this could happen. Such a man, such a hero, forgotten, left to die on the streets, left to rot. He had no problem convincing the elders to build a statue of Sergeant Apone at the village entrance. He would personally tell his story to anyone who had asked who he was, so his sacrifice would never be forgotten. Corum was an old man now. His species did not live very long. and it had been over a decade since the monument had been put in place. Yet he still came out of his habitation to tell Apone's story when any visitor or newcomer asked about the statue. Today, his grandson had come running to fetch him. He said only 2 words. "It's her." Gorham stood next to the young woman. She was looking at the statue. It depicted Sergeant Apone, bandaged arm and abdomen, sitting on a rock, smoking a cigar, a broad smile on his face. "You know how he lived?" The young woman nodded, never taking her eyes off the statue. "Do, you know how he died?" The young woman's lips quivered, but she eventually nodded. Gorham then extended his hand towards her. She took it, and they began to walk inside the village. "Would you like to see all that he saved?" The young woman was sobbing now, but rallied quickly. "Manula. Yes." End of story. Story number 2. The Problem with Human Contractors. Written by Dangerous Dingleberry. To Stacy Bellingham, Human Resource Coordinator, Distinct Developments Incorporated. From Jensen Alamaster, Senior Vice President of Planetary Development, Chiron 5. Regarding difficulty with human development crew. Miss Bellingham, I must write to express my disappointment in your insistence that we contact humans to develop one of our recently sterilized Chiron system planets. Your species has become problematic and has caused us to miss several KPIs in the last 3 years. Prior to development, any planet found to have a suitable environment for our species is checked for sentient life. If none is found, we proceed to complete sterilization of the planet using our patented Gamma Blast copyright treatment, which eliminated all planetary life. We then bring in developers to reconfigure the planet to one that is pleasant to our species, with none of the many pathogens or toxic plants and insects that have plagued our species for so long. After decades of searching, we found an ideal planet in the Chiron system. This planet was specifically chosen because it has a thick atmosphere that blocks the incoming chiral radiation, and the temperature range at all but the most extreme locations on the poles stay comfortable all year. We have almost always used our own species for development, assuming that they would be the best suited for creating a world to their liking. However, we took your recommendation and brought in humans for the work. As you explained in your proposal, humans are very adaptable and can convert wastelands into paradise in a single generation, each lasting roughly 80 of their celestial years, about 10% of our lifespans. A small contingent would populate and improve the world, he said. But once their work was done, they would be happy to move to a place with more luxuries and nicer weather, and we would move our own people in to enjoy the rebuilt world. This has not been the case. These humans flourish in this temperature band. They are happy to work in the sun all day, a feat that could kill all but the hardiest of our species. And when work is over, they go to the beach and bask in the restorative sun, or splash around in the salinized water while wearing no protective clothing. They have planted vast orchards, huge fields of grains, stocked the oceans with fish, planted dense forests, and brought in wild game, all of which we agreed to and financed. This abundance of satisfying work, good food, and disease-free environment has caused these Deathworld-evolved humans to live longer and remain healthy well beyond their normal lifespan. They have reproduced, which we expected, but their successors also work hard, lay on the beach, and refuse to wear clothes. We've offered them significant sums of money, their own interplanetary ships, and even a place on a different world, but they refuse to leave. Though they are incredibly kind in their insistence, we also tried forcing them off the planet by introducing a bacterial compound that converts the sugar in the harvested grains to toxic ethanol. But we may have accidentally made things better, because humans apparently enjoy the feeling of being poisoned. They even take this ruined grain with them to the beach, where they lay in the sun and drink it all day. This is as far as a company is willing to take it. The humans are not in breach of contract, but we can't bring in our own citizens until they have left. Our people cannot share a planet with such a gregarious species. It goes against our isolationist culture, and may be unhealthy for our species as a whole. Several of our principal investors are leaving the project for other developments. Your company is responsible for contracting the human development crews, and we expect you to remove them immediately. Sincerely, Jensen Alamastus. End of story.
The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 patrons and channel members. Alithia, Barky, Fudic Yol, Cam Maxwell, Caspar Onholtz, White Band 420, Lord Asrakal, Arcadian, and Oakfield.